94.3 FM, WHPC. From the Pressbox, 516-572-7440. Talking sports as we always do every Monday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Anyway, we talked about the Hall of Fame. That was like a big story for yes. Anything else you wanted to mention off that before we switch topics?
Well, I mean, the one thing that I really did like about Piazza's speech is when he talked about his dad, and his dad was a very well-known guy during his career, just because of the support that he gave his son, and you know, Vince Piazza was obviously a very successful businessman too.
Was he?
Yeah, big car dealerships and stuff. That guy was a millionaire, but he was a guy who supported Piazza's son when even Mike probably didn't think he was good enough. And he really instilled the confidence in him and did everything he could to try to make his kid a success. And I really liked the part, there was a part late in the speech where Piazza was talking about his dad, and apparently his dad had a stroke a few years ago. But he said to him, he said, "We made it. The race is over. Now we can smell the roses." And I just thought it was a very touching moment.
Right.
Because, you know, I mean, baseball fans and anybody who knows Piazza is probably familiar with his father and the impact that he's had on his career and his life. And I just thought it was a very touching moment. And, you know, Ken Griffey Jr. the same way. I mean, as emotional as Piazza was, and he basically read his speech, which it was a little off-putting to me because I would like to, you know, a little more natural. But it's tough. I understand it's tough and it's a very emotional day. But Griffey, in his first sentence, he was starting to break down. It was just, I was wondering, like, I covered the Hall of Fame ceremony back many years ago when Dave Winfield was inducted. It was one of the ones I did. And Bill Mazeroski was inducted that same day, and he couldn't speak. Every time he tried to speak, he would just break down. And he finally just gave up, and he just said into the microphone, "Thank you." And people said it was probably one of the shortest speeches in Hall of Fame history because it only went about 2.5 minutes. But like I said, every time he tried to speak, he was just overcome by emotion. And to me, it was the highlight of that induction ceremony, just because it was so genuine and so sincere.
Well, he also, let's be honest, he got in, you know, his numbers weren't the greatest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make this necessarily about Bill Mazeroski, but I'm just saying, using that as an example, just as far as how emotional a day it is and how difficult it is to keep your emotions in check while you have, I mean, basically you're recapping your entire life and dealing with so many people who have helped you along the way. Because, I mean, that was another thing Piazza touched on. He said, nobody makes it to the Hall of Fame alone.
He's right.
And he's 100% correct. There's so many people involved along the way. So many, you know, whether it's parents, coaches, friends, teammates, everything along the way is what leads a player into. It's probably the most difficult thing in sports is to make the Hall of Fame. It means you are the greatest of the great. And it's certainly not done by yourself.
It's an exclusive club. He also, one thing about Piazza, he said at one point, you know, him and Bobby Valentine sometimes would go at each other.
Yeah, to say the least.
But at the same time, he said that, you know, Bobby Valentine was very motivational to him.
Yeah, he said Valentine gave him the best motivational speech he ever had as a player, and then he turned around and said, "Sorry, Tommy." Which I thought was amusing. And the last bit, it was actually the last part of the induction ceremony, was Ken Griffey Jr., when he finished his speech, he reached underneath the podium and took out, there was a Hall of Fame cap sitting underneath the podium, and put it on his head backwards, which was something that I'm sure it probably infuriated some people, because back when Griffey was you know, he was the guy who made wearing the hat backwards a cool thing.
Right.
And people a lot of traditionalists got angry about that and called Griffey a punk and who does this kid think he is, and you know, you don't wear your hat backwards, it's disrespectful and blah blah blah. But you know what? It worked for him. It was who he was. He was just a kid having a good time and playing great. So I didn't have any problem with it. I thought it was the perfect touch for him to end his speech.
Right.
It's who he was and who he is, and I got goosebumps when he did it. I thought it was just the absolute perfect way to end the day. So good for him. Thank you, Ken Griffey Jr.
Okay, brother. Last week we were talking about the Yankees, and
big news for the Yankees.
You know, you basically, I don't know if you want them to lose so they'll do some trading and shake it up and not worry about this wild card thing, which they sort of, they're really not. I mean, they started the week last week pretty good, and then it sort of fell away.
They had the games.
The Yankees are 7.5 out of first. They're 510 percentage, 50 and 48. The 2 games over 500, which was better than last week.
But here's the story. All right, we talked about this 10-game series, home series, with the Red Sox, the Orioles, and the Giants, and we talked about how the Yankees needed to make up some ground. They needed to play well. And they needed to kind of show what they are and who they are. And you know what? 6-4 against these teams, that's a good homestand. If you're talking about the Red Sox, the Orioles, and the Giants, that's 3 of the best teams in baseball.
Right.
But the Yankees, in 10 days, gained 1 game.
Right.
So when you look at the big picture, it's just not good enough. And this has been my point, and I've been saying this for weeks now, and this is why the Yankees need to be sellers, is because they're still, right now, 2 games over 500 after going 6-4.
Right.
And that's all well and good, but they need to catch the Toronto Blue Jays. Right now, the Blue Jays are 11 games over 500. I believe they're 55 and 44. So the Yankees, as far as I know, and as far as I remember, and I'm going by memory here, I don't think the Yankees have been more than 3 games over 500 at any point this season. Now, you have to remember, they started off the season really badly. I think they were 7-14, 9-18, something like that at one point. They were playing .333 baseball. So, yeah, they did manage to turn that around, but they've gotten to 500, and now they've just hovered there for the last 70 or so games. So, basically, this is what they are. And they can talk all they want about, well, you know, lots of teams have late runs and get to the playoffs and do something. And sure, there have been teams that have done that. I'm not going to argue with that point. But if you're going to hover at 500 and the teams that you need to catch are 10 games above 500 or 11 games above 500, then how are you catching them? Because you haven't shown that you can play at that level at any point during the season.
But the question is this might be, if they were to, you know, start the fire sale, so to speak, the first time the Yankees have given up a season in how long?
I don't care. I mean, they should have given up. They should have done this, what, 3 years ago, whenever it was, and traded Robinson Cano and gotten a big haul for him, because they could have gotten several great prospects from the Texas Rangers, and guys who have turned into pretty good ball players, and then gone after Cano in the offseason. And what happened? As it turned out, they didn't make the playoffs or that year. Cano left for Seattle. So what do the Yankees have? Nothing. You need to look at the big picture. And this is why when obviously any Yankee fan knows that there's been a lot of talk in the last 24 hours about trading Aroldis Chapman, and that there is apparently a deal close with the Cubs for a shortstop prospect by the name of Gleyber Torres. Now, I'm sure that pretty much nobody knows who Gleyber Torres is, but lucky for you, you're listening to this show, because I know this kid. He is the Cubs' number 1 draft, or number 1 prospect. He's a guy who they signed out of Venezuela for $1.7 million 3 years ago. All right? He was, at that point, the number 2 prospect. They have this signing period every year for kids from Latin America, from Dominican, Venezuela, all the countries down in that area. These kids don't get drafted, and teams get a certain allocation. And the Cubs that year blew past their allocation because they signed another guy by the name of Eloy Jimenez, who, if you watched the Futures game a week and a half ago,
right,
you saw him hit a bomb of a home run into like the third deck in San Diego, and he also jumped over a fence to make a catch. These 2 kids were the jewels of that signing class, and the Cubs got both of them because they obliterated their signing bonus or their signing amount and had to pay all kinds of luxury tax kind of stuff. But this kid was worth it. $1.7 million he got. So, will the Yankees be that much worse off without Aroldis Chapman? No. You know what it means? It means somebody else has to pick up the 7th inning. Because now you got Stellan Betances back in the 8th, you got Andrew Miller back in the 9th, and it's just like it was last year. And what happened to the Yankees last year? They struggled to make the wild card. So as much as you like to have the quote-unquote big three in...
Right, but one of the problems, I think, what's going on right now with the Yankees, and it's just something I noticed yesterday, where I was watching I was turning on a game and they had one of those end field shots. The seats in Yankee Stadium aren't being filled anymore. Not just in the moat.
Because they're playing 500 baseball.
Right, but I'm telling you, this means a lot to the Yankees. You know, you don't want to go back to the 80s again when, you know, they stopped visiting.
First of all, that's never going to happen because now, let's face it, the Yankees, if they want to get better, they're just going to go out and buy players. And I keep telling people, but nobody wants to listen to me, the Yankees are pointing towards 2018, 2019, 2018 off-season when Bryce Harper is a free agent.
Right.
That's what they're pointing at. And they can deny it all they want, but if that free agent class becomes what it's supposed to be, I guarantee you that the Yankees are going to go on a free agent spree for the ages. And they're going to renew all of these angry people saying, oh, the Yankees buy a pennant. I don't care. But that's where it's pointing, because that free agent class is going to be the best of all time. Again, assuming that all of these guys who are going to be free agents that year don't sign contracts between now and then. But
this is like the first time in a long time where the Yankees
I don't argue with that.
Even being talked about like that.
I don't argue with that, but from my standpoint, and I am a Yankee fan, I say that without any reservation. I am a Yankee fan. It doesn't bother me in the least, because they're not good enough to win a World Series. And I saw Larry Brooks wrote something in the Post today, and he said, with the Yankees, it should be about the World Series. It should not be about struggling to win the wild card. I don't want them trading prospects to get to the wild card. Because then you lose one game like they did last year, and your playoffs are over. What did you accomplish? Nothing, as far as I'm concerned. You got one extra game. What does that mean? Does that mean anything to anybody? No.
It just shows you made the playoffs, and
but so what?
That means a lot to the Yankees.
It doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything to the Yankees. It doesn't mean anything to Yankee fans. World Series titles mean something to Yankee fans, and they are so far away from that right now, which is why I want them to make deals. Their pitching staff is not World Series caliber. All right?
Okay.
Who has that kind of pitching? The Cubs do, and the Cubs do in large part because they also have the kind of offense that can kill people. The Indians certainly have an outstanding starting rotation, and they need a couple more bats, but that's a team that would be dangerous in the postseason. The Mets obviously have that pitching, although it's been weakened because Matt Harvey is out, and Steven Matz and Noah Syndergaard have bone spur issues in their elbows, but the Mets still have control of those pitchers. So whether it's this year, next year, whatever, at least they'll still have that. But and even the Red Sox have decent starting pitching. I still think they would probably need to add an arm. But this is what we're dealing with.
One thing I want to add about the Yankees, and it's just to get you going, brother.
Of course.
Remember Joe Girardi last week? What did he say?
I don't know. What? We don't need stepping up.
He said,
we don't need this.
He didn't use the term stepping up.
Doesn't matter.
But he asked his team, hey, guys, let's make it more intense, or let's win, let's do something.
But all he said was what was obvious.
Step up about the next week before that.
Stop.
I'm not the first one to say this type of attitude.
Please stop. Anyway, the rumors that are going around. First of all, here's the other thing you need to remember about the Yankees. The 10 games that just passed were obviously important. But 6-4, like I said, and that's it's a good record against those teams. But like I said, they're treading water at this point because they gained one game in the standings, but they lost 10 games to make up ground. So they're still 2 games over 500. They've been there before this season. I can almost guarantee you, I don't want to encourage gambling, but I can almost guarantee you that the Yankees are going to lose tonight. I really, because I don't see them going 3 games over 500. I'd be surprised if they go 3 games over 500 tonight.
Well, the Yankees are playing Houston.
They're playing Houston on the road, and the Astros are playing well. And the Astros are one of the teams that the Yankees are chasing for the wild card spot.
Yeah.
All right? Houston right now is the team behind Toronto, and Toronto has that second wild card spot. But anyway, let me get back to this proposed trade. Gleyber Torres, 19 years old. They also are reportedly getting a guy by the name of Jeimer Candelario. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I hope I who was a third baseman. He actually played a few games with the Cubs this season. He's the number 7 prospect for the Cubs on MLB.com. And possibly former Yankees pitcher Adam Warren, who actually went to the Cubs after last season. He also could be included in the deal. Now, Chapman, don't get me wrong, I love having Chapman. This guy threw a fastball, 105-mile-an-hour fastball the other day. So he certainly has his stuff and is not suffering in any way or not aging badly. But if you can get this kind of return, if you look at it from the standpoint of what did they give up to get Chapman from the Reds, the Yankees are coming out way ahead in this deal. Way ahead. They gave up decent prospects, but Gleyber Torres is a superstar prospect. You know, he's, like I said, he's the Cubs' number 1 prospect. On MLB.com, he's the number 24 overall prospect, which means he is an elite prospect. The Yankees did not give up any elite prospects to get Chapman. So if you look at it from that standpoint, it works out for the best. Beltran has got to be next. As great a season as Carlos Beltran is having, I would love to see him in the playoffs. And since that's not going to happen with the Yankees, time to move him. And I'd like to move him for a pitcher. We got to get more pitchers in the system. Brian Cashman, make that happen. San Francisco, Tyler Beatty, great guy to have. Kind of like Zach Wheeler to the Mets a few years ago.
We'll see what happens. It's tough to be a Yankee fan right now because you're not talking about winning.
No, I am talking about winning, but I'm also talking about building for the future.
2018.
I'm also talking about building for the future. And the Yankees right now have a lot of prospects.
But you don't want to watch a team that wins 78 games next year.
But you know what? I'm looking for the next period of time where it's 1995 or 96 to 2001. That's what Yankee fans want. Yankee fans don't want to just win a little bit. They don't want to dabble in it, as my man Dice Clay used to say. They want to win, and they want to win they want to be in it every year. And how do you do that? You need pitching. And the Yankees don't have that pitching right. They don't have World Series caliber pitching. They don't. And there's no disputing that. And that means CeCe's contract has to run out because that's $25 million to spend on a guy who's not going to win a World Series for them. Not anymore. And they have to figure out, what do they have with Pineda and Eovaldi? And even Nova? Because right now, Tanaka is the only guy I trust in a big game. And I still don't even trust him that much because I know he's going to give up a couple of runs. So,
let's take a break, brother. We're going to take a break right now, right here on 90.3 FM, WHPC, from the Pressbox. If you have a call, comment, give us a call, 516-572-7440.
Break out the mood rings and slip on the platform shoes. It's the Super 70s, the decade that brought us Elton John, Donnie and Marie, and Fonzie on back.